right, welcome folks. Today is Thursday, April 23rd, 2015. Now, normally I don't mention the date in my videos, but I'll make an exception today because this is a very special occasion, a historic event among Sandy Hook hoaxers out there. Today is the day Wolfgang Halbig once again descends on Newtown, Connecticut. And as you can see from this announcement posted last night, among the things on his itinerary is visiting the Newtown Police Department to view some dash cam footage. Now, up to this point, we have been privy to footage taken from the dash cams of Connecticut State Troopers, but not from the dash cams of the Newtown Police Department. That has not yet been made public. However, we did get a glimpse of some still frames taken from those dash cams, and you can see them for yourself by visiting the Facebook page of the Security Academy of Connecticut. That's an outfit run by Vincent Riccio, an active shooter workplace violence prevention consultant there in New England, who actually got to take a look at the footage, not just still frames. The Hartford Courant also had a chance to view portions as well, as detailed in this article from February of last year. Here's what they have to say about it. Basically, the video shows Newtown PD Sergeant Culgren and Officer Chapman parking near the baseball field several hundred feet from the school's entrance. They run from their cars. At one point, Culgren can be seen ducking behind his vehicle as if reacting to gunfire. Then both officers grab their shotguns and run out of the camera's picture. Okay, so now Wolfgang Halbig may be among those few American citizens from the general population who has been allowed to view this dash cam footage. And I say, bravo, good for you, Mr. Halbig. Now, my question is this, Wolfgang, now that you've seen these videos, are you going to admit that you were wrong and amend your statement that the arriving officers parked 1/4 of a mile away from the school or halfway down Dickinson Drive and waited for other units to arrive? Because that's what you've led many people to believe over the past year or so. You've also got them believing that the first officers to arrive committed a big post-Columbine boo-boo because they did not drive directly up to the front of the school. Well, we're going to look into both of your claims, but first let's go back to February of 2014 when this was your main talking point. This was your big issue at the time.
You got to remember, FEMA, Homeland Security, they have millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in active shooter protocols. They have trained everybody across this country because of Columbine. Remember that? Yeah. They waited 3 hours before they went in. So now, everybody's supposed to know exactly when they hear the word shots fired at an elementary school, middle of high, they know what they're supposed to do. Hell, Newtown Police parks 1/4 of a mile from the front door waiting for other people. What's that about? You're going to park 1/4 of a mile while shots are fired and knowing that children and teachers are in there? You just don't do that.
Okay, now that was back in February, and by July, Halbig sort of revised his claim. He wasn't so much fixated on the 1/4 mile thing, but insisted that Sergeant Culgren, one of the first Newtown PD officers on the scene, said in his official statement that when he arrived on the scene, that's Culgren I'm talking about, that number one, he parked halfway down Dickinson Drive, and number two, waited for other units to arrive. Well, as we're about to see, both parts of that claim are wrong. Now, for those unaware, this allegation originated on July 4th, 2014, just before he shut down his Facebook page. Halbig made one last post and said that a couple unknown Connecticut State Troopers told him that the Newtown emergency radio transcript, which can be found in the final report, was actually a script that the officers were following, and that Sergeant Culgren was the lead actor running the whole show. But as you will see, Wolfgang takes Culgren's words completely out of context. Now, all of these so-called script claims, they were addressed in this post on Metabunk. I invite you to go there and check it out. They've all been thoroughly debunked. But concerning that last part of Halbig's claim, Metabunk posts Sergeant Culgren's entire statement, word for word, concerning that particular point in time as recounted in Book 6, Document 1 of the final report. And if you read it, you'll come to the same conclusion they did. Absolutely no mention from Kullgren that he waited for other units. Kullgren stating all other responding units were to stage with me halfway down Dickinson Drive means the other responding units were to park in the area where Kullgren parked, in which they then approached the scene. And all I want to add to this, folks, is that you can read the entire final report word for word, and you will find no evidence that they waited for other units. This is simply something Halbig claims without giving any supporting evidence. Now, as far as his claim that the officers parked a quarter of a mile or halfway down Dickinson, untrue. We know for a fact that the first officers to arrive parked about 350 feet from the front entrance of the school, in the driveway, adjacent to the parking lot. See how far off his math is by doing a little math of our own. First of all, they're exactly 5,280 feet in a mile. So if we were to get our calculator out, and we divide 5,280 feet by 4, we come up with 1,320 feet in a quarter mile. So now let's take 5,280 feet divided by 350, which is the approximate distance they parked from the school, and we come up with 1/15 of a mile, not a quarter. How do we know it was 350 feet? Well, once again, we refer to Sergeant Kullgren's official statement in Book 6, Document 1 of the final report. Before we do that, remember what Wolfgang claims in Sergeant Kullgren's official statement. He says that when he arrived on Dickinson Drive, he parked halfway down and waited for other units. Really? Did Kullgren say he parked halfway down Dickinson? Let's take a look. While en route to the scene, I directed 2 officers to approach the school from the rear of the school via Crestwood Drive. All other responding units were to stage with me halfway down Dickinson Drive. Okay? He said he directed units to stage with him halfway up Dickinson. But did he park there? Let's read on. As I approached the Dickinson Drive, I observed 8 to 12 young children running east across the front parking lot of the Sandy Hook Volunteer Fire Department. I turned onto Dickinson Drive and stopped my patrol vehicle approximately 350 feet away from the main entrance of the school. So, folks, he never said he parked halfway up. That was the original plan, but things changed. He actually parked closer, and that's where the other units followed and met him. Don't want to take Sergeant Kullgren's word for it? How about some photographic evidence? Again, I refer you to the dash cam still shots from Vincent Riccio's Facebook page. And lo and behold, there he is, Sergeant Kullgren himself, exiting his black SUV. Over there on your left is the baseball field. Now you want to get some perspective on how close that is to the school? Here you go. See that red circle up there in the left-hand corner? That's where Kullgren was parked. Now does that look even close to a quarter of a mile away or halfway down Dickinson? Matter of fact, I would argue that's closer than 350 feet. Here's another still a few seconds later. I believe that's been determined to be Chapman. Kullgren already out of view of the camera. A few seconds later, this officer has advanced to the front of the SUV. This is a few minutes later when more Newtown PD vehicles show up. That's Kullgren's SUV on the left, and you can see how close the school is in the foreground. Kullgren, Smith, Chapman, they've already made their way across the parking lot. So you can see, although they were the furthest to park away from the school, they weren't really that far away. I know some of you are going to disagree and you're going to be crying foul. I mean, who cares if it was 350 feet? That's still too far away. Why didn't they drive directly up to the school and shave off those precious seconds like Wolfgang Halbig would have done? Well, folks, because that's just not the way things work. Now, although I agree that in our post-Columbine world, first responders are told that if lives are lost and shooting is taking place, you go in as quickly as possible and attempt to confront and neutralize the shooter. But that doesn't mean you don't take precautions, and that's precisely what these officers did. Let's continue reading Kullgren's report. As I exited my patrol vehicle, I heard a number of sounds which I identified as gunfire. I believed the sounds were coming from the front entrance area of the school. I shouted to Officer Chapman and Smith, who were with me, to grab their rifles. The parking lot had many vehicles in it, which obscured our line of sight to the front door. We formed a line and approached the sound of gunfire, attempting to identify the person or persons who were shooting. Okay, so these cops didn't know if they had one shooter or multiple suspects. They didn't know if all the shootings were going on inside the building or if it had spilled out into the parking lot and there was a suspect behind one of those cars. So they parked and approached on foot. Now, is this proper police procedure? Let's find out. This guy, that's Kenneth Anderson. In 2004, this schizophrenic shot and killed his own mother in Indianapolis. And when the cops arrived, he killed one cop and seriously injured 4 others during a shootout. Years later, but not too long ago, in 2011 as a matter of fact, the police response to the shooting was critiqued in an issue of Law Officer magazine by Brian McKenna. And who is Brian McKenna? According to a bio in that magazine, he's a retired lieutenant, 32-year police veteran with a strong background in training at both the recruit and in-service levels. State certified police instructor who trains police officers nationwide in mental preparation for armed encounters. Actually wrote a book based on his column in this magazine, Officer Down, Life on the Streets. Now, one of the officers McKenna writes about in his column is Indianapolis police officer Tim Connolly, who was shot in the stomach by this gunman. And I'm going to wrap up this brief little video by reading excerpts from his article, which clearly proves that the Newtown first responders followed acceptable police procedures in their approach. Not only was it acceptable, but it was smart because it ensured that they got to that front entrance alive. After all, a dead cop isn't going to save anybody. Okay, so McKenna writes, Connolly was the first to arrive. He had doused his headlights and couldn't see much in the murky shadows lining the street as he cruised along looking for the gunman. Then, just before he reached Mrs. Anderson's home, a storm of gunfire began peppering his cruiser. Throwing his transmission into reverse and gunning the engine, he sped backwards to escape the barrage, but not before one of Anderson's 7.62s tore into his... All right, did you get that? Now here comes the critique. Now pay close attention. Cutting your lights and siren well before you arrive is the first step, but it's also important to choose a safe location for stopping and exiting your vehicle. Remember, Officers Connolly and Laird were both shot either inside or next to their vehicles. Police cruisers are easy targets that pin the driver into a fixed location behind the wheel until he can bail out. And as every criminal knows, officers invariably use them for cover, usually by getting behind the door or left front fender. As a result, they often draw hostile gunfire like a magnet. With this in mind, approach the scene along a route that allows you to remain out of sight as long as possible and stop before you enter the hot zone. Pick a location with a building or other suitable item of cover between you and the gunman's location, and then complete your approach on foot using cover as you move. All right, and even in his summary, this is Brian McKenna's main bullet point. There is a serious risk of being ambushed when approaching the scene of man with a gun calls. Use a route that allows you to remain out of sight as long as possible. Stop and exit your vehicle before entering the hot zone, and use cover as you approach on foot. I don't know about you folks, but I tend to gravitate towards real experts in active shooter response like Mr. McKenna. Here's his website. Take a look at those accolades from some very distinguished individuals, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look through that list. Federal Training Academy. Or you can take the word of a former Florida highway patrolman with less than 1 year experience in the field from 1974. Your choice. So there you have it. That's all I got to say about that. Wraps it up for this edition of Wolfgang Watch. Let's hope Mr. Halbig does the right thing. In the meantime, check out these websites and subscribe to this channel because there's a lot more where this came from. So until we meet again, this is Keith Johnson signing off.